So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the December version of the Ag Economic Dialogue sessions. Glad you're able to make it today. It's a pretty bright December day outside right now, but hopefully we can get rid of some of these colder temps and maybe something a little closer to normal as we move forward here. But different setup today. It's a one-man show with Christmas and everything coming up. People were taking off different days, so I said, "Hey, I'll just cover the Ag Dialogue session." And instead of coming up with, something pretty polished and kind of put together, here's some rambling thoughts that I've been thinking about. Ideas that I'd like to run past you, considerations for your operations to make changes, and those types of things. So hopefully, I'm going to try to watch the chat. If you have questions as we go through, maybe just chime in and unmute your microphone and let us hear what you have to say or some ideas that you have moving forward. So with that, I'm going to try to share my screen with you and let me know if someone would, if you can't see the slideshow as we get going here. But I'll make the assumption that you can, and we'll kind of get forward or moving forward here and try to stick within the time frame or maybe be done a little earlier than normal. So with that, so kind of where I started the whole conversation and we were putting the ag dialogues together for December, we kind of had that New World screwworm thing come out in the news and make some pretty big headlines and really tweaked some of our cattle prices and jumped things on us as we were looking at stuff that way. So I kind of started with this cattle on feed report, the November one. December hasn't came out yet, so we're not updated for the current situation. We're a month behind here. But if we really look at where those numbers are compared to average for our 23 and 24 numbers, we're really kind of stepping up above where we had been from 18 to 22. And that kind of got me thinking of several things related to prices, feed considerations, what's going on out there in the industry. So really wanted to think about, if we're not bringing in any Mexican feeder calves because of the import restrictions, if we're making some changes to heifers on feed, if we're culling cows a little harder, and those types of things and considerations, and how do those all affect our cattle operations at home? So what I kind of hit next was then if we're looking at that supply, what's the demand for red meat in cold storage? And with this, again, November 25th, the new December version isn't out yet. But if we think about what's in cold storage and what's available, we're pretty much utilizing the products that's being processed in the marketplace. The total numbers here are down 3.1% over a year ago. Leading that is poultry, which is actually down 5.7%, beef down 3.1%, and pork down 2.7%. And those kind of were, the numbers are kind of shocking to me because you start looking at the carcass weights that we're sending to town. And if you watch any of the live cattle markets, pick your nearest sale barn and watch the live cattle markets go through. There are some big steers and heifers getting processed right now. Lots of heavyweight steers that when I was in college and however many years ago that was, those steers would have been dinged really hard for having excessive carcass sizes by the meat packers. And now they are just part of the day-to-day. This is what we're running with. So 950 pound carcasses aren't causing any problems out there for the processors. They're still buying those things. For example, I heard, you follow all the pages on Facebook and the different market reports about 2,000 pound Holstein steers went through. that's going to be a really big carcass when they hang those steers up on the line. So big carcasses going through adding meat to the supply chain, but we're still seeing these decreases in cold storage product available. So kind of interesting numbers there to be thinking about and how that affects our operations and the future of the price situation that we're dealing with right now. Prices are always fun to talk about when they're high, right? And right now we're kind of playing with some of those high cattle prices. These are the different South Dakota weekly prices for 400, 500, and 700 pounders going through our sale barns as accumulated by the AMS and reported by the Livestock Marketing Information Center. You can see we had some seasonal dips and some twists, but you can also kind of see where maybe that Mexican screwworm is affecting some of our supplies and some of those feeder cattle components as we come forward, and maybe not affecting us up here as much as it is down in southern feedlots that are looking to supply their, fill their yards because that's one of their sources of cattle, coming in from Mexican ranchers down in that area. But really looking at where that price is going relative to where it was from 2018 to 22. Next year we'll start putting in those 23 numbers into the averages. So really bumping that average price up with our current situations. But, if we're running 400 pounders, they weren't at $2 for an average in that earlier 5-year time frame. And now we're looking at $3.50 to $4 for our feeder calves at 400 and 500 pounds. We've really set some big records and some highs. And really want you to be thinking about if we've got calves on feed, where are we going with them? What's their end goal? What's our end result hoping for them? Are we using some of the corn that we've got in storage to add value to these calves because of the price of corn, and its effects that we're having right now? But really be thinking about what our end goals are and maybe thinking about some protection mechanisms. One of the things that I've kind of learned through my 20 some years in extension here is that when prices are really good, you guys quit worrying about budgets and marketing. When corn and soybean prices were really, really poor, I could have grain marketing meetings and you guys would show up and you wanted to figure out how to get the best bang for your buck. And back then, the whole corn and soybean market, if it moved a nickel or a dime during the whole contract, that was a big change. Now we're moving, dollars per day and, really making big changes in our market prices. So I really want you to be thinking about putting your market or your budgets together and still looking at what it's costing on a per unit basis to raise those animals, selling corn, whatever you're producing. I really want you to be thinking about those budgets. And we've got all the budgets online. The livestock budgets are there. They've got different options for you to put in different feedstuffs. Everywhere that there's a yellow box in our budgets is someplace where you can make the changes. If you're looking at making changes to the livestock budget here that I have shown, as long as the unit is the same, you can change the 20% liquid out for something else. Okay. So just to kind of show you an example of the results sections from those budgets, this one is from the cow budget. We look at what operating costs might be given a feed ration that I inputted, adding some vet costs, some supplies, maybe some breeding fees, putting in bull charges, replacement values for the heifers, if we're trying to replace some of those, and figuring out what our total cow cost per year are. Back in the day, $801 for feed and total costs for that cow, that was a lot of dollars, and still is a lot of dollars when we're thinking about any opens that we have around. They're consuming $800 worth of inputs just hanging out at your place if we've got open cows around. Really want you to be thinking about marketing those cows and still making better decisions with them. If we're putting $800 worth of inputs into her, how are we getting that $800 back? How can we improve our operation? Maybe not by getting better, bigger, but by getting better. Maybe we improve our calf crop. Maybe we bunch our calf crop together and we have a larger number of bigger calves born at the same age so that they're selling in better group lot sizes. We spent a lot of hours sitting in sale barns a couple of years ago actually running this, running the numbers and finding that if we can take out two or three of your smaller group sizes, even on operations that are selling 50 to 100 head, if we can limit the number of cuts that we have on that cow herd, we can really see some dramatic increases in prices received on a per hundred weight basis, which extrapolates into total dollars amount for your operation. Um, so, you get the red book every year, you're keeping track of all your cows and calves. I'd really have you take that one step further this year and actually use the data that's in that red book for something other than matching said cow to its calf. Okay, let's look at its calving distribution and figure out how many cows you had calve in the first 21-day intervals, how many calved in the second, third, and fourth, and how many did you have that are really straggling out there, and what was the average weight of those calves as you looked at the older 21-day calves versus that last 21-day calves, and really look at where the prices are that you're receiving for those cows, for the calves as we move forward. The charts that are in front of you right now are income per cow. So this is taken off the $800 carrying charge and looking at, different calf prices based on, we're kind of at 350 today. If prices go up or if prices go down, if we have an 85% calf crop versus a 95% calf crop, and then we can also look at the value changes from selling, maybe we sell more 500 pounders. There's what our average income on a per cow basis is of $686 versus if we're selling some 350 pounders, we've got some 450s that go through, we've got some 550s that go through. Are there things that we can do and change in our operation to, one, increase the number of calves that we're selling, and then two, group them up better so that we've got more consistent weights that we're taking to the sale barn so that we can really look at how that affects our operation. On the flip side of that, there's corn, soybeans, and wheat prices. They're kind of all over the place, and we're using some of it for feed. We're looking at maybe storing it to improve our options to sell there. On the website is also our storage calculator, and this really helps you look at your operation and say, okay, I've got soybeans in the bin, I got corn in the bin, and it's just kind of hanging out there right now because I'm hoping that prices go up. Well, we can do all the hoping that we want, but until we can make some of these decisions using some real numbers and some real evaluation tools, we can kind of look at what we're really costing us as we move forward. So I just put some numbers here together and in a corn example for you. So say it's costing you about 6 cents per bushel per month to store the corn. When you're thinking about storage costs, I want you to be thinking about the electricity cost to run fans if you're still running those, opportunity cost if you sold that corn right now and put the money in the bank, what kind of interest could it be earning you, or what kind of interest is it taking off of any loans that you have outstanding at this point, and kind of think of, what's that real effect of storage and how many months that we're looking at storing that commodity. These were futures prices as of, I believe they were Monday's prices I think I put in here, and I looked at some local elevators, so I had some pretty relative expected basis expectations for March and May and those months out there. but really start looking at how the basis effects, depending on which elevator you're at, combined with the cumulative storage costs and what that expected cash price for you is as you keep moving forward. So, we talked that there is a little carry in the market from our current prices to May, but is that 6 cents that we're showing right there, is that enough to overcome the 36 cents of accumulated storage costs that we're putting together? So, really want you to be thinking about what are we doing with those commodities that are in the bin? Are we forward contracting them? Did we put some type of, is there a put on it so that we set a floor price? Really be thinking about how storage is affecting that commodity that you've got in the grain bin. If you're planning on feeding those products, it's a kind of a different look there because you're trying to gather up some of that income from high-priced feeder calves or fat cattle on lower-priced corn. So, think about the options that you have available and what's going over back and forth that way. Uh, just another view of that price comparison over time, showing here's the future price in blue, then we've got the implied price, and the expected price by the time we take out basis and take out storage. So we can see where our prices go when we add storage costs in there, especially when we're given a pretty flat, there's not a lot of carry in that market showing right now. So just be thinking about some of those actual things and the storage components. There's not a lot of snow to move around grain bins right now. So if you're thinking, maybe I could gain a couple extra cents, well, maybe you gain a couple extra cents by selling sooner rather than later and waiting to clean bins out in March or April, when maybe it's more typical for your operation. Another thing that's been kind of in the back of my head is, where's this drought monitor situation going and how's that going to affect not only production of corn and soybeans for 2025, but also that cow herd effect. If you look at this map, you'll see that 100% of South Dakota is in a D1 or more intense drought across the whole state. That doesn't happen to us very often. And when it does, it usually makes things pretty dry. I'm not going to pretend to be the meteorologist or, be our climatologist. We've got Laura on hand for that. But when we start looking at these and we look at the current, moisture situation, the current temperature forecasts, where does that put us when we start thinking about forage needs for that cow herd coming up next year? Not a lot of corn stalks got baled this year because they weren't worth very much. They might be worth a whole lot more come spring if that's what we're looking to carry, some of our pastures and leave them without cows in them for a little bit longer so that we can take advantage of hopefully some spring rains that kickstart us. But we really need to be thinking about that long-term feed situation. If we're looking at taking care of cows in that third trimester, do we have the nutritional needs and enough good quality feed around to take care of their needs as we move forward and try to push off pasture turnout and those types of things, given our current drought situation and where that might move us as we're thinking about those things as well. So I talked about price protection and some of those components through some of the different slides. We did a whole presentation last year, probably about this time, on the new weaned calf risk protection insurance. It's the baby calf protection, basically. It's a crop insurance product from RMA. It was rolled out only in a handful of states, South Dakota being one of them. I don't know what their expectation for utilization was across those 5 states, but South Dakota led the nation and those 5 states with producers buying 10 whole policies. So there were 10 policies brought across the state of South Dakota. I think all of Texas had 7 policies bought. So, it's new. There's times that maybe you really think about it. So participation was pretty low. I don't know if what that means for how long they're going to keep this product available and those types of things. Some of the changes that are listed there that they've made to kind of clean up some issues in 2025, um, I think are pretty important and a part of the reasons why people maybe didn't jump on this as a new risk management tool. The calving season was fairly short. It was only 60-day time period that you could cover calves. Different county components, clarifying the notice and reporting components for moving calves and weaning calves back and forth and some of those things. There was some clunky components to this insurance program, but I really want you to be thinking about your risk and your situation, given the price of calves currently, and if we would have, a mud situation or a winter or late spring blizzard come through, that would be hard on our calf crop. Really think about how the price of calves and the potential for loss affects your operation, and then talk to your insurance agent about this product and see if it's something that can work for you to give you a little bit of another safety net basically is what this protection is that says, if one of those 2018 April storms come through and we can't see cows for 3 or 4 days and we're calving like crazy, how's that going to affect our operation? Um, I think one of the biggest components of insurance when we start talking about it on the livestock side is that people tell me it didn't work for me because I didn't collect a payment on it. That's kind of like saying your car insurance didn't work for you because you didn't collect a payment on it this year. And personally, I pretty much always keep my fingers crossed that I don't need to collect on at my car insurance every year or any year, basically. Because if I collect on it, that means there was a crash. And if we collect on this wean calf risk protection insurance, that means there was a crash. It was the 2018 or 2019 April blizzards that take out a bunch of calves while we're calving and those types of things. So think about where your level of risk is and what you're trying to protect, and maybe talk to your insurance agent about some of the changes that they made and some of the things that they've cleaned up. And as you're going through that and you have those conversations, shoot me an email. Let me know why you chose to use the product or why you chose not to use the product. I need your ideas and your recommendation and your feedback on what these things are and how they're being used so that we can make better adjustments and, maybe some better suggestions to the RMA on different ways to make that be a better policy and something that more than 10 people are purchasing. Because there's a lot more than 10 cattle producers across the state of South Dakota if we think about that. Another kind of huge component right now is LRP and cattle prices. I don't know if you've seen this on my Facebook page, but Dr. Dearson wrote this up as part of one of his write-ups the other day about LRP and using LRP when cattle prices are where they're at right now. If you have cattle in feedlots, I would be very leery of you not having some type of protection on them. Whether you're buying puts, whether you're using futures board, whether you're using the LRP products and tools that are available there, be paying attention to what these prices are. We've got a lot of dollar potential out in those feedlots. And I think there also is a lot of potential there to really help heal up a lot of operations, get a lot of operations kick-started the right direction, but we've also got a lot of loss potential there too. And I don't want you to get into that greed, hope, and fear philosophy of marketing where because prices are all the way up and where we saw them on those charts, I don't want you to be thinking, oh, we're good. Prices are good. Even if they drop a little bit, I'm still okay. Because move from that greed component, as prices keep going up, and I'm not using greed as a bad word here, but when prices start falling, we hope they go back up. And when we get stuck into that hope component, it usually freezes us from doing anything proactive on our operation. And say something major happens in the marketplace, then prices start really falling out of bed. Now we're in that fear situation. We've got the price of feed that we put into these calves, the opportunity cost that we could have sold the calves and, received $2,600 per feeder calf or something like that. I think we really need to be looking at protection components, either in the form of this LRP, or an option or whatever works for you. Please be looking at something that direction. All right. The volatility in the market gets crazy, changes the prices of things. Things like screwworm show up and bounce prices around and kind of throws some of those crazy factors at us. Really be thinking about what we've got in the feedlots, what we're planning on feeding, and getting some protection and insurance on those at some point in some manner. All right. I think that's probably enough on that conversation. And then as we get towards the end of 2025 and we're starting to do some tax planning, maybe it's a little late for a lot of you to do much planning. You're just filling out your forms right now. But I really want you to be thinking about retirement planning and long-term care planning and what your plans are in those areas. I know a lot of you are going to say, well, we're not going to retire, Heather. It's not part of the plan. We're going to die here on the farm, die in the tractor seat, die in my saddle. I've heard all of the conversations. I also know that dying in long-term care is, probably something that's coming up for all of us. There's not a lot we can do about it to avoid it. Death is part of the conversation that we need to be having and be thinking about for our operations, especially if we're bringing that younger generation back in and we're making some money and having some income this year that, maybe it looks like, oh, we're going to pay too much in income tax. So instead of paying income tax, we're going to buy new piece of paint here. Okay. Be thinking about maybe some other options that are out there for you in the forms of retirement accounts or other money generating mechanisms that you can use to fund retirement, fund salaries for the next generation coming in, all of those different things, and taking care of ourselves and our operations for the long-term care components. Long-term care is expensive. Long-term care is a necessary evil for a lot of people. How many years we need it is also kind of one of those big things. But if you're not starting some of this tax planning and tax conversations with your attorneys, with your accountants or CPAs, I really want you to take that next step in your management and your operations and say, all right, we've got to do more with what we've got. We've got to be better with the income that we have coming in, especially as we're trying to think about how are we going to minimize income taxes. Well, maybe given the stage of your life, maybe minimizing income taxes and how much you pay in isn't the best thing for your long-term future, because Social Security is determined by how much income tax you pay in. And I get a lot of glazed looks at this time of most conversations because farmers and ranchers don't want to pay any income tax in. I get it. I understand. But if we're also thinking that Social Security is how we're going to pay ourselves after we retire, we've got to be thinking of some of those other options and some of the components that way. So we're tying in that Social Security planning to our tax planning, to our production planning, and it all rolls in together and it all needs to be talked about at the same time. So I want you to move beyond new paint tax planning. I want to challenge you to think about some different options that might be available for retirement planning so that you've got funds coming from someplace when the cattle and corn sales should be going to the operation and not maintaining the 80 and 90-year-old mom and dad on the operation. We've got other plans and things put into place that take care of mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, aunts and uncles, as the next generation is using the farm income to take care of the farm and grow the farming operation. All right. So, um, with that, I'm going to give a shameless plug for the Sustaining the Legacy dates that we have coming up yet. Uh, January, we're going to be in Watertown. So if you're in that area and you want to head to Watertown, early registration deadline is the 23rd or 24th of December. After that, there's a price increase. So if you're interested in joining that Watertown session, get after that and register sooner than later. Registration for any of these locations, either in Aberdeen, Mitchell, or Watertown, is $70 a person. And when you think about the value of your operation and the number of moving parts that might be involved in your estate plan, your succession plan, your retirement plan, there's not a lot of things that you can do for $70 that are going to give you as much information and as many tools as what I'm going to give you at these different conferences. Um, there's just tons of things that you can learn at these programs and maybe verify some things that you're doing correctly and things that maybe you want to do some changing up and making some switches in your operation. So excuse me. You can register for all of these on the events page. It's very similar to signing up for the Ag Dialogues, except you will need your credit card at the end. So, but plan on joining us in Watertown, Aberdeen, or Mitchell. Lots of great information coming at each of those sessions that I'd sure like to share with you and get your feedback on. So as we talk about some of that estate planning stuff, it really starts with, what do you want to have happen to your farm? Is it going to a farm kid? Is it going to a neighbor kid? Are we renting out the acres so that we can fund retirement because we don't have a kid coming back to the operation to actively farm, but we want to pass those acres on to our farming heirs? Whoops, excuse me. Those are some of the things that we need to know what we want to do as we get started in that plan. Then we can start putting together the rest of the steps about how we fund all of the things that need to be done, whether it's production, whether it's retirement, and those types of things, and long-term care. Maybe we want to plan into our succession plan time to do other things. Maybe because the next generation is coming back, you're able to go hunt or fish or travel to see the non-farming kids that are in different locations. Okay. It doesn't matter what your goals are for your operation. There's no right or wrong goal listed there. But you need to be able to tell me what it is so that we can help you start implementing a plan that either helps you plan to farm till you die, which is fine. We can make plans that will do those things. Whether you want to maintain your land base, pass it on to your heirs, maybe you're passing it on to that farm kid that's been helping you farm for years and years. Lots of options available to you. Lots of things that we'll talk about those at those Sustaining the Legacy conferences. So here's my challenges for you for 2020, excuse me, for 2025. Kind of some things that I want you to be thinking about is, I really want you to look at where you are financially and be able to put those numbers down when you go talk to your lender. I want your numbers to be the numbers that the lender sees, not numbers that he's been generating for you. How about the personnel on your operation? Do we have the right people involved? Do we have the right personalities working together? Are there things that we can do to improve that personnel challenges that maybe we have on our operation. Whether it's not enough help, whether we need help doing something better or making different improvements. And then I also want you to think about your legal situation, and if something happens to your operation, are you protected from the legal standpoint that way as well? All of those things combined to make a strong transition plan, to make a strong production plan for your operations. And once you know where you are in those three components of financial, personnel, and legal, where do you want to be? What do you need to improve at your operation? So maybe we're taking a better look at price protection components. Um, Corn and soybean prices aren't great. Are there things that we can do to protect the prices that we can get right now to prevent issues from further falling prices? Are there things that we can do to protect these record high cattle prices and the animals that we've got, on hand that we're feeding? And then be thinking about some of those production changes that maybe you want to start implementing into your operation, whether it's looking at the calving distribution calculator to see if there's, maybe we synchronize cows one year and bull breed heavy and get everything brought back to a 45 to 60 day calving window and really reduce the number of stragglers that we have out there. Maybe we're making some of those changes. Maybe we're looking at cover crops to extend grazing. And how do we implement that on a traditional corn and soybean rotation? What are we you know, what are we changing? What are we making adjustments to so that we've got late season good grazing before we can go to corn stalks? To try to avoid that nutrition plane complete decline when we've got nothing but dry brome grass out in our pastures. So think about where you want to be. I dare you to write those down, put them on a piece of paper, put them on the refrigerator. Think about what your goals are for the operation and how you're going to meet them and exceed them for 2025. So, um, that's what I have for you today. I told you it'd be different. I told you there'd be a lot of topics kind of sent towards you. There's my contact information, and it's got my email. If you don't follow me on Facebook yet, I sure encourage you to try to do that. And then also the extension webpage is listed there. The highlight there would be to hit the agriculture tab and then ag business. And that's where all of the ag econ information, all the calculators are. If you want help walking through the calculators, give me a holler. Phone number, email, however it works best for you. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. I'll open it up to any questions, thoughts, ideas, slides that you want to see again, slides that you're not sure you agree with. While you're thinking about some of those ideas and topics, the January sessions, as soon as this one wraps up and we shut down the registration for the 2024 events, January will open, and I will get everybody that's been attending our Ag Dialogues, I'll get you the link and information that way. You'll be able to sign up for all 12 months if you want at one time. And then in the invite or in your order confirmation, there's a link that's tied in there so that you can download a calendar feature and put it automatically into your calendar if you've got the right calendars that talk to whatever Zoom talks to and all of those types of things. So, but we'll do third Fridays again in 2025 and see what we can make happen from that direction.